Hi everyone, we are back from the short break and we are excited for the first panel of the day, and it's dedicated to advertising, user acquisition, optimization and stuff. We have some really cool experts here with us in the virtual studio on Hamburg Mobile Summit Live. And we're just about to see the speakers in the room. And first we have Peggy from MobileGroove. Peggy, can you hear me? One second. Yeah, we are connecting. Yeah, could you guys please push the button if you see the pop-up window with unmuting yourself? Yeah, Peggy?
Got it. Okay, are we ready to roll?
Yeah, we're ready. Yo,
Great. So I'll just kick right in. Thank you, Igor, for the
thank you.
introduction.
Thank you, and keep it
Yes.
going.
Oh, we'll do it. This is what I love about live. It's spontaneous, and it's great to be the first panel of the day as well. So as you said, Igor, it's about all of the above. It's the complete user acquisition cycle, lessons learned from the experts. We're going to be talking about, smarter ad spend, reducing user acquisition costs, getting and keeping those users in the funnel, the ones we really want, retargeting them as well. Redefining the funnel, even CPI versus CPA. Lots of tough questions, lots of good questions, lots of great participants in our panel. So let me just kick it off. I'm Peggy. I'm your host. I'm also a mobile analyst, a tech consultant, owner of MobileGroove, and senior contributor at Forbes, frequent contributor to Pocket Gamer. So I'm always interacting with quite a few of you. Um, we have a big panel, so I'm just going to go around, introduce us. Maybe you want to raise your hand if we don't see your name exactly there, but just raise your hand and say who you are. So I'll start off with Elena or Lena Vinokurova, Senior UA Manager, Wooga. Hey, Lena, great to have you here. User acquisition professional, as I said, at Wooga, to give you some perspective here because we want to be able to understand the questions. Wooga, we're focused here on casual games, monetizing with IAP plus ads. Lena herself, Wooga is, of course, a story-driven casual games developer from Berlin, as I said. Lena, her role is everything in charge of acquiring users for the iconic island hidden object game Pearl's Peril. In addition to that, she's an expert in running re-engagement campaigns. And before Wooga, she was at Mytona in Singapore. Keeping with games that are not social casino, because we'll get to those in a few moments, Felix Janssen. He's Director of Performance Marketing at InnoGames. Hey,
Great to be here.
Great to have you, Felix. Hamburger Jung, I like that. So born and bred in Hamburg with the background, how can you be more at home than you are right now, right?
True.
Indeed. So 12 years of experience in online marketing. Gaming always has been a part of his life, his passion, his profession, and he's here with us today. And we're going to be talking about strategy and simulation. That's what your focus is, monetizing with in-app purchases. I go to Gabi, the only non-app marketer here, but known to us all, Gabriella, or Gabi Koziski, Senior Director, Sales EMEA at Remerge. Gabby's been with Remerge probably, since there was retargeting, because that goes back 4 years. App retargeting was just a concept. Now it's a must. Before that, Globetrotter, living in China, working in a consultancy, running an NGO to reduce waste in the fashion industry, speaks 5 languages, English, Swedish, Polish, Chinese, and German. We'll have a quiz after this, Gabby. And when you're not helping companies grow revenues through retargeting and being amazing, you play the cello. Moving on, Amos Adler, Director of Marketing, DGN Games. Great to have you, Amos.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. And you're one of the 2 social casino games, so you're monetizing with IAP. Have a great passion for games for the past over 5 years, been in mobile games industry, always UA, working, as I said, at DGN as Director of Marketing, where you lead UA, live ops, retargeting, ASO, and CRM. So jack of all trades, mastering them all there. Great to have you here. Finally, Ben Eschel, Director of Marketing, Gliding Deer. Okay. Ben has been in the marketing industry for also over 5 years, 4 of which were in mobile games, leading marketing operations, all the way from strategy to hands-on level. Another social casino game, also monetizing IAP. So we get a better idea of your companies, but also your monetization models, because if we're talking about the funnel, we have to know that big question, how do you make the money? Because that's going to determine the strategy, right? So as I said, advertise, acquire, optimize, retain, we cover them all. We're going to buzz right through them. Keep with me. We're going to keep the pace, but we have to start, I think, any conference at this point, asking that big question. Are we in the new normal? Is there such a thing as a new normal? What have you seen? I mean, COVID-19, let's face it, it's been great for games. Reading the data, Apptopia, App Annie, whatever you have, it's a lot of use out there, a lot of organic traffic. Let's start and just get some shorter answers on what you have seen. Let's start with you, Lena. What have you seen? What has been the impact of COVID?
On our side, as you mentioned, we see a lot of traffic coming from. I think generally we see that not necessarily coming from the organic, but we see that the prices across all our acquiring sources was really cheap, and it was like chance for us to acquire more users at cheaper price with the same budget. And interesting, what we saw that the quality of those users, it stayed the same as the pre-corona users. We still closely monitoring them, like how they're going to behave like in the long-term tail. But was like interesting for us, and it gave us the sign that it's a good chance to invest more during that time.
And what about you, Felix? You saw, I would imagine, similarly, the traffic. What did you actually do? Was it organic, or did you dial up spend to take advantage of it?
I can just also say we report both. So on the organic side, we saw an uplift, and on the UA side, we also took the chance to invest where possible to get the game more traffic, because this was cheap, and there was also just more traffic, and to be honest, also less competition, as some big advertisers has to step out, and we were really lucky that we get through the situation very well. And so that was fine. And also just on the existing players, we really saw much more activity in there. So in terms of playtime in the games, so the players, they spend a lot of time in the games as they had to stay at home. So also for existing users, a huge impact.
And of course, lots of micro moments to cash in on. You took a chance, Amos, Social Casino. How was it?
So obviously we saw decreases in CPMs, but it also felt like it's much easier bringing whales and dolphins. Probably there was less competition for social casino. Usually we buy players at a higher price point. So online gambling and sports betting going out of the equation created a scenario for us, which was much easier acquiring a high quality user.
And finally, Ben, you have a game in the same genre, but maybe a different experience to share. What did you see?
Yeah, so obviously, just like Felix said, a lot of the big brands stepped out of the marketing, and obviously everyone saw the CPMs going down. But we kind of took a risk because we increased the budget around a week before the prices went down. So we were able to take advantage of the whole decrease in CPMs, and performance was great. So we took advantage of the whole period. We didn't miss out a day. So we kind of took a risk, and it paid off.
Okay. And I mean, overall, Gabi, obviously you're not the marketer here, but you do have that overarching, very valuable view. I mean, could you just give me an idea of what your clients, what your customers, what your users were seeing? Were they also seeing, in many cases, organic, but now it's the challenge to maybe think about the quality of those users and think about how to use retargeting, because there's going to be some choices people have to make. COVID-19, that big boom is initially over, perhaps.
So just going back to the initial question, I mean, on our end, I've been at quite a few panels, and we saw, and I've always been talking about how our clients increased spend around COVID-19. And but now I've had the pleasure to really look back. Now that we kind of the industry is bouncing back, I had the pleasure to kind of look back the last 6 months and see what actual increase of revenue we have delivered to our clients. And interesting enough, we actually more than doubled the amount of revenue we delivered to our clients in terms of in-app purchases from mid-March to mid-May. And then after mid-May, it's steadily starting to decrease. But overall, we're still like 50% more than we were pre-COVID. So yeah, we're still seeing things looking better than it did pre-COVID.
Okay. But now, of course, we're looking at what's going to happen now, right? Because it was initially a big boost, but now there's a challenge, with maintaining even growing the results. I'll start with you, Ben. You had to spend some money, but now you have to make certain that, the value of the user is worth it. What are you doing to sort of set up this strategy? Is it going to be something that's a departure from how you operate? You have to set up a new model, or how do you approach this? Because it's a new challenge, perhaps.
Yeah, so the risk doesn't end on day 1 or day 7 or day 14, because the big challenge is to try and measure these users on a longer term, 90 days, 120 days. So the challenge is constantly looking at the value of the users and making sure that they're at least at the value of the users you were bringing in the post-corona period. And prediction models are getting fueled because you're getting a lot more users, so they're getting more and more accurate. So these two things are the two main things that we need to focus on in order to make sure we can bring back the money we're spending.
And about that, those models that you're creating, they're your own, or is this like feeding? Because the question is, you're getting data, but it depends on how much are you sort of relying on the AI of Google and Facebook to sort of complete the equation for you.
So we have our internal prediction models. Then
okay.
The more users we bring in, the more accurate they get. So
okay.
This was another important thing we were able to achieve.
Okay. Amos, you're in a similar position. You were able to be, inundated by organics. You focused on some burst campaigns. I thought was pretty interesting also to make certain you don't just get and keep users, but also get and keep rankings. What was that all about? What was that strategy, and how are you going to continue that?
I wouldn't call it specifically bursts, but we shifted our attention to focus on specific markets, not in the old-fashioned sense of doing a kick in the first few days, but we funneled the budget a bit differently. Also, it was co-aligned with in-game content that was specifically suited for specific markets, and everything created like a very positive situation for us, so that we were able to penetrate high position. And the organic growth was so big that basically we need to rethink our strategy regarding budget recoup, because we're also considering organic traffic, and we try to manage the decrease in a sense that it won't be too steep.
I mean, it's interesting about the regions. I'm just curious, is that mix very different because of COVID and now and I wouldn't call it post-COVID, but we are reopening. We are different now than the initial sort of shock of it all. Is that region mix changing?
Yes, definitely.
First of all, a little bit about it, Amos?
Yeah, because first of all, because of prices, we don't have the luxury to be as aggressive as we were in some countries, 2-3 months ago. And not in a cynical sense, but we are trying to focus on regions that are more heavily impacted, just because people are spending more time at home and have less places to spend their leisure budget. And it's been working quite well for us.
What about you, Lena? I mean, you're looking at a very, in a way, you're in a great position because you have sort of, I wouldn't call it niche, but it's very dedicated. Your users, they come there because they want to play the game. Absolutely. This is the focus. And it's a different type of player type, to want to look at a hidden object game. What are you approaching? Your challenge must be thinking about retargeting some of these users. How are you approaching that? What kind of mindset are you using, or rule of thumb? Because you don't have to worry so much about churn prevention. That's in the game. But you do have to look at paid retargeting.
Yeah, so we started some of our paid retargeting about like 1.5 years ago for our oldest games, because we started to see that prices increasing, that we don't have that high reach on like social medias, for example, anymore. That like acquisition is getting harder and harder and more difficult. So we focus on the paid retargeting now. I would not say is like big part of the total UA budget, but we allocate it and run it every month with the dedicated budget for it. For the retargeting, we usually look at the incremental uplift always on a monthly basis. It's very important for us to make sure that we acquire our users back with return on investment.
Now, Felix, you went pretty much according to plan. You know, you didn't have to do very much. You're focused on UA. It was coming in. You didn't have to change really anything. But you did, I think, open up the floodgates to just let that UA take on its own dynamic. How did you approach that? And how are you now going to forecast based on that?
Yeah,
you always have too much of a good thing, you know?
Yeah, that's true. But like we said, so we didn't change the strategy, as we like always try to take opportunities. But usually it's more like for one partner, one country. It's not happening often that we see the opportunities over like all partners in nearly all countries. So that was different, but we always try to take those opportunities, and we did. And like I just said, open up the gates. But we did it also by monitoring our data. So we didn't turn from 0 to 100 because we also have games with a very long lifetime. We're talking about several years. So we try to keep monitoring the KPIs and see if we see the quality is the same. And if we saw, okay, user quality is still very good, then we take the next step and the next steps. Sometimes we might take 2 steps in one as we see, okay, quality looks very good, but we focused on existing partners and existing sources. So it's not that we started something new with a high risk. So we know our partners, we know our sources, and if we can scale there, we were pretty confident that the quality kept the same. And right now it's looking very good that the quality is the same.
So always checking with that data, always looking at that. That's also important because if the fear here is like, I got these new users, which is great, but are the players gonna be payers? So, you know, that's about looking at the data. And Gabi, again, you have that overview. I mean, are there, you know, patterns, signs to look for to say, okay, this is where it's going to pay off. This is where I need to retarget. We'll get into this deeper later as well, but I'm just wondering, you know, while we're staying on the data, Felix is watching it, Lena's watching it, everybody's watching it. What are the patterns I need to watch?
So first of all, isn't the fear always there, right? So I think that doesn't really apply to COVID specifically. The payer, you're pretty much always going to have around 2% payers. Out of these payers, you're going to have a small proportion of around 10%. They're going to be whales, which contribute around 90% of all your in-app purchases. Does that sound about right, guys? So you're obviously not the only one who got such a big boost of downloads over COVID-19. And users, they usually purchase in one game frequently, usually purchase as well in other games frequently. So the patterns stay the same, actually. You need to take good care of your loyal users and don't let them lapse to start with by looking into your data and really understanding what are the patterns that you see and what triggers them to convert to start with. So this is like just, you know, to start with some advice from my side, but I'm aware we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper in a minute.
I mean, that's an interesting point. I just want to have a show of hands rather, because I think it's really important to understand, you know, are people pursuing or creating or developing, you know, churn prevention strategies actively? I know it's sort of early days to be really thinking a lot about the funnel and deep funnel. Churn prevention, is that something you're actively pursuing, actively developing? Have a show of hands. Churn prevention strategies. Okay, so you're moving along. Are they fairly early days? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Not for us. We're working on different CRM funnels to try and prevent the churn, or at least change the curve for a while now. Of course, it acted differently, and we needed to add different steps, you know, based on the situation that there is outside. But for sure, it has changed during the last few months.
Okay.
I'm also happy to share something. Like we set up a model where we score every user every day. How likely is he to churn in the next 2 weeks?
Wow.
And so every user gets a score from 0 to 1, like every day. And then based on this score, we can take measures on our churn prevention. So sending them gifts, sending them targets, what could be the next new thing in the game. And this is based a bit on machine learning, but also like big decision trees we are looking at. And this really helps us, especially in those times, to see, okay, more users are churning, or how can we prevent the new users or new target groups to churn by taking some CRM measures into account. So this really helping us because we get so many new players in the game, to really keep them also from the beginning. And because the fun at the beginning is always very important, and so this is one way we try to keep them in the game.
That's fascinating. That formula, Felix, if you would share some of that.
I would love to hear more about it as well.
Yeah, really. What are your indicators? What are you looking at? What's that formula? Is recency, frequency, monetary, something else? I mean, I do want to get into the balance of CPA and CPI here, because you want to have high value users. I talk to so many different app marketers, and some people say, I don't care what it costs. If they're high value, I've got CPIs that are, hundreds of dollars, depending on the genre. And I've got others who say, no, I cast a wide net, and I just narrow it down as we go down the funnel, and I get to where I want to be going. I'll stay with you for a moment, Felix, because I think you're going to have a very interesting and scientific answer. What are then the indicators that say, I'm going to keep them, or I'm gonna let them go? You go for the whales, throw away the minnows. Do you try to capture all aquatic creatures? What goes on over there?
Yeah, I think it's we always try to, and we call them internally like VIPs, for sure to get them into the game. It's not easy, because you cannot go out if you go back to the fishing and with the small net and try to fish them. So you have to go broad to get them in. So this is clear. So it's difficult to find the right balance between going broad to get the big whales into it. And like you said before, I think data is key, and we have our own models, what we have developed internally, so our own BI, and we have not only the churn prevention model, which is one example, but we have also our LTV prediction model, which gives us a very early indicator to see, okay, if we have a whale or not, and if we should dive a bit deeper in this source. And I think this is very important. We need to identify also, if your game has a longer lifetime, you need to know pretty fast if it has the potential for a whale or for a paying user or not to work on this path. So there again, data and modeling is key for your success.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ben? I mean, CPIs, you just can't resist them when the prices are so low, right? But then you have to have other considerations. What are some in-game maybe indicators perhaps that it's time to do something else, something different? Because you do want those whales, as Gabi pointed out, that's always going to be the 2-3% of your players, and the rest of them are just a bargain too good to pass up. So how do you achieve that balance?
Yeah, so the name of the game would eventually be ROI. And in those high value campaigns, the CPIs are skyrocketing, and it's super hard to scale that. So we have to find the sweet spot of the mix between the installs campaign and the value campaigns, where the in-game indicators are obviously purchases that we see and the early day ROIs we're seeing. But eventually those value campaigns are getting really, really high CPIs, and eventually they're super hard to scale. So you need to add up those install campaigns in order to try and get an organic uplift and increase the daily active users as well.
A lot of heavy lifting, though, to that, Amos. What are some shortcuts as you're making, again, that balance, CPA versus CPI? You're obviously focused on ROI, ROAS probably also as well, I would imagine. How do you try to just streamline that a bit? Because, again, it's happening at such a pace.
Yeah. So it's like a classic struggle between growth and acquisition teams, because naturally, when you consider paid traffic profitability, you don't need to consider CPI. But obviously, ROI is what matters most. Actually, during this period, we focused on CPA specifically because we saw such a drastic decrease that we just said to ourselves that if we just bring as many pairs as we possibly can, we know for a fact that some of them will be, of course, whales and some dolphins and other aquatic creatures, like you called it, and it paid off. These like CPAs were also the first times that we said to ourselves, okay, this is time to lift our foot off the pedal a bit. I feel like that RPPU or the quality of the user is too like stochastic for us to predict, and so we try to take like one level above that.
What about you, Lena? I mean, you have again that type of game where I'm going to be a bit of a appassionato to begin with to come in, but you have to make a call. CPA, CPI, and of course, when completely just to say no, this person, I just will exclude them from my campaign.
For us, I think like we also like totally ROI driving company. So ROI is most important for us. We have a prediction model for the ROI, and our model includes CPI into the calculation as well. So for example, if we can acquire the same quality of users at cheaper price, which happened during the COVID times, it for sure brings us the higher ROI. And I think like for us, the CPI, it's kind of indicator, at least at the moment, how competitive market it is, and how many actually like advertisers trying to acquire the same users. As you said, there's not so many payers probably. So this is quite competitive market. And generally, like for the exclusion, we don't go maybe like for the cheapest CPI, but we'll try within this pool, try to make our CPI as cheap as possible.
I'm also hearing a lot about marketers taking a different approach and just trying to be really smart about this, sort of not opening up the floodgates necessarily, but trying to understand that range of aquatic creatures and saying, okay, I have some dolphins, I'll train them to be whales. I'll show them the right things at the right time, not just in-game, but also in retargeting, Gabi. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or is there some tips or some ways that I can literally be clever about how I capture my whales or train other players to be whales?
I love
sort of move them up.
I love your terminology.
I'm into animals, yeah, I can tell. The aquatic creatures, yes. What are your tips, Gabi?
So to start with, if you want them to become whales, start treating them like whales, right? So that's pro tip number one. So so besides what Felix said, and quite a few of you, it's important to align the product strategy. So send them the right updates as you do with whales. Assist them with difficult stages like you would do with whales. Give them gifts to loyal users. Do the same with dolphins as whales. But from a marketing side, your priority is really prevent them from lapsing, right? And you can do that by observing their inactivity and recency of purchase. So like whales, dolphins, if they stop spending and they get out of this, addiction loop of your game, they're most likely not gonna stop spending again. So it's important to really keep them, observe, how often they usually purchase and how, when they purchase last, and then really keep them engaged. If you're afraid of bombarding them too much with, just UA banners, don't do that. There's so many things you can utilize. You can also push product updates. You can inform them if you have any new products in your catalog. You can even send them rewards, inform the world about rewards via app retargeting and send them via deep link directly into the reward page. So there's so many things that you can promote via app retargeting that you don't feel too you know, to that it's too much for a user, but definitely keep them engaged and don't let them lapse, because once they do, they might not stop spending again.
It's really smart. I mean, it is about that value. I'm just curious. I'll ask around. I know that Felix, you're more focused on the user acquisition than actually sort of like keeping them in the funnel. So I'll look at you, Amos, for a moment. You know, is there anything you can share about something that you're doing to, as Gabi is telling us, you know, sort of just keep them interested, increase that frequency? I won't even talk about scale right now, because scale is a different question, but frequency is that first step to really valuable scale, right? Because if you have the users and you get them to, you keep them, but you just increase the frequency of using your app, making payments, that's, you know, that's nirvana right there.
Of course, it's something that we work on closely with product team and the live operation side, of course. Just to give like a short example for COVID period. So we tried to be reactive to these times in game. It was like a big discussion about how much acknowledgement you need to give it without looking cynical about the situation. But we try to be, first of all, responsive and like to acknowledge that users are spending more time in the app, and to give them benefits for it, like on us, what's called. And it, I think it did well to our users. Like it increased their spin amount, their bet amount, their session time, and I think they acknowledge it greatly and appreciated it.
I've heard about that. You know, giving people extra lives, more time, all sorts of things. Ben, what did you do? Because again, a social casino is, you know, you can really cash in on the fact that we have, first of all, we're stuck at home, but also these moments. The sessions are probably getting longer for you, so you're able to do more.
Yeah, we did something nice where we gave to our users through our Facebook page weekly challenges, and we randomly chose a winner, and that winner got to pick 2 organizations that they can donate money to. So we donated like for the fight against COVID-19. So each week, a new player got to choose 2 organizations. And we donated around 40 grand in the last 2 months, which was nice, and it made them feel they're doing something nice also. And besides that, obviously, we gave a lot more freebies, and people were able to play a lot more, even if they weren't payers.
I mean, I know it's a lot about product. That has to be aligned. And this is a great time. That's why I'm hearing product is the new marketing. You know, you get together. Now we're working at home anyway. So any silos that you might have had, oh, they're down the hall, doesn't matter. You guys just get together on calls and you do your thing. What's it like for you, Lena? I know it's not product, but a big part of this is that experience, that value. How are you communicating that, creating that, you know, because it's going to be, again, about keeping the users that you have, because you've managed to get quite a lot.
Yeah, so we internally communicate with product as well. I think the main strategy rely a lot on the game side. On the product side, we have a lot of live ops events coming to keep users engaged. As Ben and Amos mentioned, we also try to engage our users during the COVID-19 period. So we partner up with World Health Organization to participate in a campaign, play a part together, so our users can stay at home, be safe, engage with the game, and keep socializing through the game.
Felix, I would imagine you also had some approach, again, you know, show value in these times, a lot of value in these times, and will continue to be, you know, just listening to your community and interacting at some level. Now you've got a game, again, you know, it's strategy. There's total buy-in. I'm addicted. What did you do to just raise that bar a little bit in the experience side of the equation?
Yeah, as said before, I think we also communicated pretty closely with our players about the situation, and also take part in this cooperation with a health organization. On the other hand, I like also said before, events are pretty important, and we do pretty much events anyway, especially in our biggest game. But this is what we pushed even further. So to have even like all days with events, so there's always something new for the players, and not only the usual player cycle, but something new. So when they come to the game the next day, there's a new event, something new to explore to keep them excited. I think this was very important. We're still doing that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll stay with you for a moment because you're one of the companies that also tried something different because, hey, prices were down. I heard everyone talk about, exploring new opportunities, podcasts, TV, different, everything except for out of home, to be quite honest. So what did you do and what did you achieve? How did you sort of just push the envelope a little bit in these unprecedented times?
Yeah, I think like TV is always something important for us, like also before the whole COVID situation. But in these times, we pushed there also pretty hard because, like, again, people stay at home, watch more TV. So it was also very, very good channel for us. And also having in mind retargeting, so jumping on this train. I think it's hard for us, and we tried several times to measure the TV impact on retargeting. We all believe there is an impact because also people just install a game, seeing a TV spot, are reminded on the game and keep playing, or even saying, okay, this is a big brand, so I should keep playing it. So we're doing it, like you said before, for UA, and we also measure it as an UA channel. But this is the channel where and I have to say, and this as a performance marketer hurts myself, that we believe that it has a huge retargeting impact because it's so hard to measure it to see an incredible uplift for the organics in TV. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important. It plays an important role in our whole marketing mix.
I'm not sure how, I think actually I've seen some pretty amazing and innovative creatives in social casino. So I know that there's a lot of sort of low-hanging fruit in just being really, really cool in how you present yourself in your advertising, in your UA and getting people back. But is there something maybe particularly innovative or effective you can share? I'll ask you, Ben, Felix is doing TV. Not everyone can do TV, but there's other places where you have levers to push or pull, even if it's just like a really, really cool approach to data. But what did you try?
It's not something too innovative, but we did something that we took footage of our own employees inside the company, and we combined that with some gameplays within the game.
Oh, cool.
And because our game is a social bingo, and the social effects and the impact of social things inside the game have big impact on the lifetime of the user and how much they're playing, and so the combination of both within one ad was a big success for us.
Pretty smart too. I can see that because it's social, it's real. We want to be genuine. We want connection. Amos, did you do something? Maybe you did one better. Who knows? What did you do? Have a little competition between the two of you guys.
Ben, no, it's family competition.
It's cousins, right?
I copied everything from Ben. Whatever he did, I did. And actually, we didn't do anything too innovative. Like I said before, we did release a very, very successful game that co-aligned with the spirit. So we tried to exploit every version, every concept, every hook, marketable hook we can try on top of this theme. Really squeeze the CTRs out of that one, but nothing that's worth mentioning.
Okay. Well, then we'll get to something I think is really interesting. We just have to go there because that's what everybody wants to hear. Metrics, changes, shifts, tracking, success, the opposite. I know we talk about ROI, but that must be the North Star. But maybe there's some shift in those metrics, how you measure them, how you look at them, what they mean. I'll start with you, Lena. What anything that is now more of a focus than maybe the North Star. So maybe there's one right under it that's just as important.
I think the LTV at the moment is the most important metric, which we try to predict, and try to monitor on a monthly basis, or just to make sure that our predictions is aligned with the what we actually have at the moment. And I think for the most of the performance marketer is the most important metric.
LTV, ROI. Yeah. LTV and ORI, same thing for you, Felix? Or something new and different? Definitely those two.
thing
LTV,
for us.
ROI. I know you guys are ROI. So Gabi, from your perspective, I mean, where do marketers struggle? I mean, they're very, very clear about what they consider to be a success. They're very clear about the metrics. I mean, you can just call them off down here, but still they struggle. Where do they struggle, and what might you be able to offer as an observation to ease that struggle?
Cool. So I think, well, if I had to choose one thing where marketers struggle is really, I think there's a belief that we can change the way users behave, which and very often I observe clients of us trying to change the way they behave rather than follow the patterns that they already are behaving, right? So if you look into your data and if you track the right events, you can really start observing, you really look into your data and see, do they usually purchase in the first 7 days? At what point do they usually convert? So if they do that, then keep them doing that, right? Don't get them out of a loop. Don't wait 30 days in order to retarget a user when it's already, broke the habit and doing something else. Retargeting is there in order to make sure that we keep the users engaged and prevent them from lapsing, same as with CRM activities, and get more in-app purchasing from your users. So I feel where the struggle is really to understand that point of view, to follow behavior patterns rather than change them. And on the other hand, I really see them struggling, wanting to trust vendors, right? And there's a big problem because back in the days, there was a lot of affiliate networks out there and the trust towards vendors have been broken.
Yeah.
We have very often, there are good vendors out there. So if your goal is to drive more revenues, just, take the advice and consultation, how to align that in order to drive more revenues. And so this is where I see the most struggles that people don't. And these days, Elena mentioned incrementality, everything is, the industry has really moved forward and it's so easily to prove value, what an additional, channel can bring to the game. So you can't really cheat that anymore. If you're targeting active users in order to bring more in-app purchases, you can measure that if the channel brought more in-app purchases. So, so I think it's important to just take a step back and, start trusting, but the good vendors.
Okay. On that note, you're talking about where we struggle. And what I like to do is I try to sort of just shine a light, sort of spotlight some thinking that we think we are thinking, but we're not. We have a lot of these preconceived notions. And I love watching it in app marketing, how we sort of shift that thinking and mindset almost every year, actually. So it's about overdue. We haven't gone to conferences, real ones to sit together. So I like the idea we have, the gathering here, that we can really help our audience in understanding like where our thinking is, right? So I'd like to go through some myth busting. What are we rejecting as a result of what we're living and experiencing right now? And I've got one, for example, and it follows on with yours, Gabi, that I'm hearing a lot of, which, retention curves. This is great. This I got from Reforge. I think it's awesome. Average retention curve, average anything, just toss it, because who wants to be average, right? That's pretty cool. That's a myth to think about, a new way of thinking. I'll start with you, Amos. What are you doing? What is your myth that you're busting? What is your new way of thinking?
I don't know if it's a myth, but I think that a general guideline should be always challenge your existing distribution or your existing portfolio or your existing KPIs. Things are constantly changing. If it's user behavior, and maybe not the specific user, Gabi, we're not trying to change its pattern, but as a whole of the population that you have in your app, the mix is constantly changing and you need to adjust yourself all the time. And sometimes you go wrong and sometimes you go right. But tests, you just need to iterate and change until you reach, a global optimum.
I'm also hearing that a lot, mix up those channels, do something different. Lena, what are you doing different? Or what is the myth that you've had to bust or toss?
Also not sure this is a myth or not, but at least like I hear a lot from the different developers that product and UA somehow like in a funnel. I personally believe it's something like a more communication and circle. So there's a lot of channels how UK can affect product and product can affect UA. So having this communication with your product team, discussing what kind of struggles you have, what kind of challenges, it always helps to bring up this level one step higher.
I'll continue with myth busting. Felix, you have a lot of data over there, so you have a lot of certainty, but there must be something you question.
No, I think what I think, I don't know if this also is reflecting the myth, but there were a lot of buzzwording around automation, machine learning and stuff, and perhaps we will also question it, but now I think everyone should stop questioning it and should start investing in it. Otherwise, it could be too late. So it's not only buzzwording. I think it was perhaps a few years ago. Now you should take action on it. And I think there was also a nice presentation this morning about this topic. But it's good to work on this topic and to Otherwise, I think the whole industry will go to this way, and you should be on the train.
Time's flying. We're going to be wrapping up, but I wouldn't want our audience not to have the last two myths and last two views. Ben, I'll take you first.
So the myth would probably be, every UA manager has his own, just like Amos said, the patterns, the settings within each campaign that it's doing, and it's repetitive every week. One campaign is underperforming, it's paused, and the same thing is launched again. So I'd probably say be curious and fail, because fail 10 times and succeed once, and it's going to be worth it for the whole company. So take nothing for granted, and always be curious and try new stuff within each source you're buying traffic from.
So you had a myth you started with, Gabi, but I'll let you finish if there's something additional you want to be mentioning, because I do want to take some questions. I want to encourage everyone out there. We're having fun here. No holds barred. Ask any questions. It could just be something, very, very simple, like, let your imagination run wild. It's pretty free and flexible here. Gabi, I'll continue with you.
All right. While we're waiting for questions, feel free to interrupt me. I can just, I will agree with with everyone. I mean, I think the biggest myth is all these things that we have preset by ourselves, like these 7 days in activity, 30 days in activity, all these things that we have preset before we have the capability of testing properly. So I think it's time to always go with it's time to test all of that, because every game is different. Social game is very different than, then the social, etc. And you have your own, you need to start testing all of that. So that's, I guess, from what I would advise from my side.
Well, I think everyone who's been listening, maybe lurking out there, I know how it is, we're also in Hamburg, so Germany is maybe some questions out there, but I'm sure we're all available, during the whole day, actually. I'll be out there, hanging out there, chatting and doing things. Gabi, Felix, Lena, Amos, Ben, I want to thank you all for sharing, for being so candid, for letting us have a little bit of a look into how you think, how you approach things above all those metrics. I think it was really valuable. Thank you all for just a wonderful panel.
Thank you very much. It was awesome.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you.